Egypt's El-Sisi and Russia's Putin discuss strategic partnership and regional stability. Trump announces a full ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan. And Yemen's Houthis launched 2 drone attacks targeting Israeli sites. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has returned to Egypt from Moscow after attending the Victory Day celebrations. That comes as the Russian capital hosted extensive events commemorating the 80th anniversary of Victory Day in World War II, a significant national holiday in Russia. President el-Sisi attended these celebrations at Red Square, responding to an invitation from Russian President Vladimir Putin alongside 27 other prominent foreign leaders. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Russian President Vladimir Putin have held extensive discussions. Putin expressed appreciation for Egypt's participation, highlighting the strong historical ties between the nations. That came as the two counterparts met during the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow. El-Sisi congratulated Putin and emphasized Egypt's strategic partnership with Russia, noting collaborative projects like the Russian industrial zone in the Suez Canal and the El Daba nuclear power plant. They agreed to enhance Russian tourism to Egypt and strengthen cooperation in energy, food security, and agriculture. The talks also addressed regional issues, including the situation in Gaza, with el-Sisi stressing the need for a lasting solution to the Palestinian cause. Putin acknowledged Egypt's role in the region and supported its efforts for stability. Now we turn to the latest developments in the India-Pakistan conflict. The White House has announced that the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in ongoing communication with the leaders of India and Pakistan amid escalating tensions between the two nations. That comes as White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt emphasized that U.S. President Donald Trump seeks to de-escalate conflict. Leavitt added that Ron Dermer, who is a top advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, was at the White House earlier for talks on Gaza and other issues. She added Dermer met with members of Trump's team.
At odds with one another for decades, long before President Trump was here in the Oval Office. However, he has good relationships with the leaders of both countries.
A few hours after the White House spokeswoman's remarks on the situation, a missile exchange erupted between India and Pakistan, prompting U.S. President Donald Trump to step in and announce that both sides had agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire following a night of U.S. brokered talks. In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote that this agreement comes amidst ongoing strikes and counter-strikes between the two countries. Trump congratulated both nations for their decision, highlighting the use of common sense and great intelligence. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs has announced that they contacted the Director General of Military Operations in Pakistan on Saturday afternoon, with earlier expectations for both sides to cease fire. Additionally, they added that the military operations directors of India and Pakistan are scheduled to hold talks again on May 12th. The Pakistani foreign minister has confirmed the country's agreement with India for an immediate ceasefire. The ministry emphasized that Pakistan does not seek war and prioritizes peace and security in the region. The Pakistani foreign minister stated that the agreement with India is not partial, but a complete understanding for a ceasefire between the two countries, emphasized the active diplomacy aimed at achieving the ceasefire. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stated that the governments of India and Pakistan will begin discussions on a wide range of issues at a neutral location. Rubio expressed pleasure in announcing that both countries have agreed to an immediate ceasefire, mentioning that he and Vance have been in contact with senior officials from both nations over the past 48 hours.
The Ukraine war is a terrible thing, but it's not our war. We didn't start it. The United States has been helping Ukraine over the last 3 years.
A while before Trump's announcement, the Group of Seven has urged India and Pakistan to exercise maximum restraint. They also called for direct dialogue between the two nuclear-armed neighbors amid escalating hostilities. The night before the ceasefire was announced, India launched air-to-surface missile strikes on 3 Pakistani air bases. The strikes targeted Noor Khan, Murid, and Shorkut air bases, with reports indicating that while some missiles hit the runway, key military assets remained unharmed. 4 individuals were injured, and residents experienced panic due to the explosions. A Pakistani army spokesperson confirmed that no damage took place to the nation's Air Force assets following the Indian strikes.
Update on the attacks by India, the missile attack by India on the Pakistan Air Force bases. Majority of missiles have been intercepted by the alert air defense system of the Pakistan Armed Forces. The few that have been able to sneak in have not been able to cause any damage to the flying assets of Pakistan Air Force as per the initial damage assessment reports.
Following the Indian attack, Pakistan said it had launched a military operation in response to the Indian airstrikes. Official Pakistani television confirmed that the military operation has begun, signaling a potential escalation of the crisis between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. Powerful explosions were heard in Srinagar in Indian-administered Kashmir, near the city's airport and army headquarters. That comes as officials and witnesses confirmed similar explosions were reported in Baramulla in Kashmir amid ongoing fighting between India and Pakistan. Tensions have escalated since Wednesday when India launched strikes targeting what it described as militant bases in Pakistan, prompting Islamabad to vow retaliation. India has reported an increase in Pakistani troop deployment at the border, heightening tensions after Pakistan declared a military operation against India. Indian Air Force Wing Commander noted the movement of Pakistani troops suggesting an offensive stance. She emphasized that Indian forces are prepared for action but remain committed to non-escalation if reciprocated by Pakistan.
Several harassment attacks were also attempted from Srinagar till Nalia at more than 26 locations. Indian Armed Forces successfully neutralized these threats and majority of the vectors. However, limited damage was sustained to equipment and personnel at Indian Air Force stations at Udhampur.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has convened a meeting with the chiefs of the armed forces, the Chief of Defense Staff, the National Security Advisor, and the Defense Minister amid rising tensions with Pakistan. Meanwhile, locals in northern Punjab and northwestern Rajasthan discovered fragments of unidentified projectiles after Pakistan announced a military operation against India, with significant debris found in Rajasthan. The Pakistani Defense Minister has stated no meeting date has been set for the National Command Authority, which is Pakistan's highest military and civilian body overseeing its nuclear arsenal. This announcement follows the Pakistani Army's earlier report that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called for a meeting. These announcements followed a Pakistani military operation against India.
India is making it, it's almost impossible. Every day there is an incident which raises the bar of conflict in the subcontinent. The Indian incursion this morning has definitely created a situation where this conflict is
India has issued security directives to ports, shipping terminals, and shipyards amid rising tensions with Pakistan. The government instructed IT security officials and maritime facilities to review and enhance systems to guard against cyber attacks. And for more analysis, we now move to Mark in our newsroom.
Yes, thank you very much, Selma. Good afternoon, everyone. For more on this ceasefire between India and Pakistan, we are joined from Cairo by the former ICCR research fellow at the School of International Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University, Dr. Syed Makawi. Thank you very much for being here with us on Qnews, Dr. Makawi. So how credible is this ceasefire agreement announced by the US President Donald Trump, which he, of course, has called full and immediate?
Good afternoon to you and your audiences. In fact, the Pakistan Foreign Minister has announced the ceasefire along with the Undersecretary of Foreign Minister of India today at 5 p.m. It is an immediate and comprehensive and full ceasefire regarding the land, air and navy forces. And now we are witnessing a diplomatic and political breakthrough made by U.S. Along with the two sides that was at the brink of a full confrontation between Pakistani and Indian armies, and will go into and might go into be nuclear confrontation along with the differences between Pakistan and India. So the Pakistan going to use the tactical nuclear confrontation. In fact, the American mediations have saved the two parts of nuclear society.
Okay, well, let me ask you about the United States involvement, because originally Donald Trump said that the United States was not going to get involved in the situation between India and Pakistan. So what role has the United States played in mediating this conflict, and how effective is its influence today?
The U.S. has a very delicate influence with respect to Indian-Pakistan relation. In 1999, there was a tension lasted for 3 months that featured by a military confrontation as the United States stopped this confrontation by President Clinton. That to Nawaz Sharif that the Pakistani army have transferred the tactical nuclear weapons without the announcement of Nawaz Sharif that moved him to announce the ceasefire and the stop escalation to India. In 2019, in the first term of President Trump, and a similar confrontation took place, and President Donald Trump played a very important role. In fact, upon this crisis, the U.S. realized this crisis of 20th of April that India is about to strike militarily against Pakistan, and Washington knew very well that Pakistan is going to retaliate. Therefore, it seems that the United States waited for their announcement goals in order to peace within the two countries internationally. And then the U.S. Intervened to prevent the two parties to indulge into nuclear power. So it is a political and diplomatic breakthrough that saved the world with a horrible war to take place, and its repercussions will be doubled the Ukrainian-Russian war.
Well, it's worth concentrating on that. What would be the potential regional and global consequences if this ceasefire fails?
We do not expect this agreement to be failed. It is expected that India announced many times, particularly after the execution of the Sundur, the military operation against Pakistan, announced that wasn't keen for more escalation, and the justice were prevailed by the terrorism attack. And Pakistan announced that it isn't care about escalation and wanted to solve the issues in diplomatic feature. And following the operation, Pakistan has wished to constitute international committee of the incident of Paragon and to enriching the perpetrators to be held accountable. The two parties never wished to escalate the matters, but the popular pressures within India and Pakistan provoked the two sides for this militarily confrontation, but even though it was limited, but they were needed in reaching an understanding and to move down to the ground.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on the program from Cairo. That was the former ICCR Research Fellow at the School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Dr. Sayed Makawi. Thank you very much for joining us. And it's back to you, Selma.
Thank you, Mark, for conducting this analysis. And now we move on to the latest developments in Yemen. Media outlets affiliated with Yemen's Houthi movement have said the group carried out 2 drone attacks targeting Israeli sites. In response, Israeli media reported that security systems detected a missile launched from Yemen towards Israel. The reports confirmed the missile was intercepted before reaching its target. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tel Aviv will continue its military operations against the Houthis, adding that Israel is not bound by the U.S. announcement of a ceasefire. The Wall Street Journal quoted an Israeli official as saying it's still too early to assess the implications of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to declare a truce with the Houthis. The official noted the move took Israel by surprise. The director of Sana'a International Airport, Khalid al-Shaif, announced that Israeli airstrikes caused losses estimated at $500 million. Al-Shaif said the attack destroyed 3 aircraft belonging to Yemen Airways. Earlier in the day, he confirmed the suspension of all flights to and from the airport until further notice due to severe damage inflicted by the Israeli strikes. NBC News has revealed that U.S. airstrikes on Yemen under President Donald Trump have cost over $1 billion since March, raising questions about the effectiveness of the campaign against the Houthi movement. The report highlights that although Trump recently announced a ceasefire between the United States and the Iran-aligned group, the operation has so far failed to deal a decisive blow. According to U.S. officials cited by NBC, the operation involved thousands of bombs and missiles, the downing of 7 American drones, and the loss of 2 fighter jets. Despite weeks of airstrikes, the report notes the Houthis remain capable of launching cross-border attacks, including this week's strike targeting Israel's main international airport. The report also added that the circumstances behind the sudden truce remain unclear, as does its likely duration and long-term implications. Now we move on to the latest developments in Gaza. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has climbed to over 52,700 and over 119,300 were wounded. Gaza-based health authorities have reported that Israeli military operations in Gaza had killed 27 Palestinians and injured 85 others in the past 24 hours. Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati has reiterated the necessity of establishing a serious political horizon for implementing a two-state solution, resulting in an independent Palestinian state based on the borders of June 4, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. The statement was made during a meeting with the deputy chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Hussein Sheikh, where Abdel Ati expressed Egypt's full support for the Palestinian Authority and its reform efforts, while also emphasizing ongoing mediation to resume the ceasefire in Gaza and facilitate humanitarian aid. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says 70% of Gaza's population is now either inside active military zones or under evacuation orders. In a statement, the UN agency warned that Gaza remains under total blockade for the third consecutive month, adding that civilians are dying and humanitarian access is urgently needed. It confirmed its readiness to scale up aid deliveries once the siege is lifted. Protests erupted near the residence of Israeli President Isaac Herzog, with demonstrators demanding the return of Israelis held in Gaza. The Detainees and Missing Families Forum said no military victory in Gaza will be meaningful without the repatriation of those still detained by Palestinian groups. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. Egypt's el-Sisi and Russia's Putin discuss strategic partnership and regional stability. Trump announces a full ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan. And Yemen's Houthis launched 2 drone attacks targeting Israeli sites. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.